Harvard Law School panics as merit-based admissions destroys their student diversity. Coming from Bloomberg, Harvard Law's fast track to the American elite is losing black students. A year after the Supreme Court banned race-based admissions, the law school's first-year black student enrollment plummeted, with repercussions way beyond the classroom. Okay, but what repercussions are you going to have in society, regardless of skin color, race, sexual preference, if you bring people into a law school and then push them into society at a high-level position that they didn't actually earn? It's hard to believe, but that's what these people want. Harvard Law School has a long history of catapulting black students into the American elite. Barack Obama graduated in 1991. Kenneth Chenault led American Express Company, while Ken Frazier rose to CEO of Merck & Company, and investment bank Lazard tapped Ray McGuire as its president. A generation before then, Conrad Harper became the first black partner at Wall Street firm Simpson, Thacher & Bartlett. Decades later, as president, Obama would appoint Ketanji Brown Jackson, class of 1996, as a federal judge on her way to becoming the first black woman to join the Supreme Court. But if by definition you're not qualified to get into law school, should you really be on the Supreme Court? Probably not. Now, that's not to say you couldn't get into any law school, but you should not be in an elite law school if they don't have to consider your skin color or sexual preference to let you into school. Now, Harvard Law's status as a training ground for potential black stars in the world of business, politics, and culture could be under threat after the Supreme Court banned the use of race in admissions across the college system. A year after the decision, just 19 black students began their studies in the prestigious legal program, or 3.4% of the total class, according to data from the American Bar Association for 2024. That's down from 43 or 7.6% in the previous year, and mirrors a drop in black first-year undergraduate enrollments to 14% from 18% at Harvard overall. There's nothing wrong with black people or white people or Asian people that they can't accomplish what they need to accomplish to get where they need to go based on merit. That's the nature of the American society. So if you don't belong somewhere, don't go somewhere, because bad results will happen if you do. And when I say go someplace you belong or don't belong, I'm talking about objectively, based on your ability. Given the outsized role that credentials and connections play in the workplace, shrinking black enrollment has repercussions beyond the classroom, said David Wilkins, a Harvard Law professor who has studied race in the legal profession. Quote, "You're also closing off the entry point to those important jobs where the people in them have transformed American society," said Wilkins, who taught another famous Harvard Law graduate, former First Lady Michelle Obama, as a student. It was understood that the Supreme Court's decision would impact the ability of educational institutions to attract and admit a diverse cohort of students, Harvard Law School spokesperson Jeff Neal said in a statement, adding that conclusions drawn from 1 year of data are necessarily limited. Quote, "We continue to believe that a student body comprised of persons with a wide variety of backgrounds and experiences is a vital component of legal education," Neal said. He went on to say, quote, "Harvard Law School remains committed both to following the law and to fostering an on-campus community and legal profession that reflects numerous dimensions of human experience." If you have the grades and the ability and the resume to be able to get into an elite institution, then you belong there. If you don't have that, then go back and get those skills and then come back when you're ready. That's all you need to do. Long before the drop in black student enrollments was confirmed, Sean Wynn, the president of the Harvard Black Law Students Association, noticed a difference. "It was evident at events for admitted students as early as last spring," Wynn said. Then, at the group's annual trip to Martha's Vineyard in September, second and third year students were surprised at the small number of new recruits. The Beach Day is the first big social event of the school year and a popular outing for first-year law students, as the first years are known. Also known as 1Ls. Quote, "1 year of having only 19 1Ls is a travesty, but 2 years is even worse, and by 3 years, the entire function and look and relevance and presence is different," Wynn said. "We recognize how dire the situation is, and we're doing everything possible to combat it. How about just being direct with young people and telling them you need to do your homework and be focused on your studies if you want to make it in the most elite institutions? Because that's what really needs to happen here." The Supreme Court's 2023 ruling undid decades of affirmative action in higher education, with some of America's biggest employers warning at the time that they'd lose access to a diverse pipeline of highly qualified candidates. Harvard, along with the University of North Carolina, was named a defendant in the case. Since the decision, efforts to recruit through diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, both in education and corporate America, have been even more fraught, as conservative groups have mounted legal challenges to DEI policies because they're all completely illegal. President Donald Trump has issued executive orders aimed at ending such initiatives, leading to broad pullbacks across the federal workforce and among major employers. Quote, "This country is going through a new Jim Crow," said John Carr, Harvard Law class of 1983 and a retired partner at Simpson Thacher, referring to the laws that legalized racial segregation in the U.S. South until the 1960s. Harvard created its first professorship in law in 1817 with help from an earlier bequest from Isaac Royal Jr., whose family made much of its money in the slave trade and on a sugar plantation in Antigua. Conrad Harper was the only black student in his graduating class of 1965. After a job with the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund, which helped drive the civil rights changes, he joined Simpson Thacher. Harper's success inspired Carr to follow his path. Carr became the firm's second black partner and spent almost 30 years as a corporate lawyer. Quote, "There's no question about it, in the sense that numbers matter," Carr said. Numbers like grades should matter. Numbers like the number of hours you spend studying your homework and doing your work and reading to compete with other students to get a fair place in a competitive law school. Among elite law schools, Harvard's first-year class is the largest in size, about 560 students, compared with Stanford Law and Yale Law at roughly 200 each, according to the ABA. Harvard is also somewhat of an outlier in seeing a drop in black enrollment. At Yale, Stanford, and the University of Chicago and Duke, the country's other top law programs, the number of black first-year students increased in both actual terms and as a share of the total class. The fact that Harvard was specifically named in the Supreme Court case might have contributed to the decline, said law professor Wilkins. Black first-year student law enrollment also fell at UNC. He also cited the resignation last year of Harvard's first black president, Claudine Gay, as a possible deterrent. Claudine Gay, of course, was also not qualified. And that has nothing to do with her skin color. She just was not qualified and was caught plagiarizing her work, in addition to being caught up in other inappropriate behavior. She had to resign. Now that the law school's application window for this year is closed, students are already thinking about future candidates, the class of 2029 and beyond. Akusakas Twom Antwi, a second-year law student and Dartmouth College graduate, headed to the Washington, D.C. area last month with fellow students to recruit. Over 2 days, they visited historically black college Howard University, as well as the University of Maryland and American and Georgetown universities. A committee chair of the Harvard Black Law Students Association, Twom Antwi, said that for several months she spent 15 to 20 hours each week on recruiting, creating materials, reading essays, and planning events on top of her coursework. She went on to say, quote, "This is important to us as a community." She held legal internships with the NBA's Detroit Pistons and Warner Brothers Discovery. Quote, "We take pride in this. We're trying new things and more things than before." The BLSA has also created a guide for prospective students, including sample admissions essays to help dispel confusion about what applicants can discuss in their personal essays. While colleges can no longer see data about race, they can still consider how an individual applicant's background has affected their life. Quote, "You should feel comfortable discussing your racial identity without fear that it might hurt your chances of admissions," a letter from the association's board reassures candidates. Harvard changed its essay requirements after the Supreme Court ruling, asking for both a statement of purpose to describe an interest in the law and a statement of perspective, which can draw on how a student's experience and background have shaped them. Since Trump took office, the Department of Education has reiterated that schools may not craft essay prompts that require applicants to disclose their race. Once applicants are admitted, the society stays engaged to encourage them to enroll. Wynn, through his role as the group's president, is in touch with many of this year's admitted black students and is already worried that the number of enrollments will stay low. More applicants will win seats in the class of 2028 over the next month, he said. Deborah Lee, class of 1980, recently spoke at the group's spring conference. The former CEO of Black Entertainment Television Networks joined a call with other black alumni to address the drop in enrollment. Quote, "We want to help the law school recruit better and make sure the numbers don't fall," said Lee, who has donated funds for law students to take public service jobs during the summer. Much more needs to be done, he says. Jaylon Moore, a senior at the historically black college Dillard University in New Orleans, has already earned a spot at Harvard Law for September. Moore, an economics major, said he also was accepted at law schools at Stanford, Duke, and the University of Chicago, in addition to the University of Michigan, the University of California at Berkeley, and Tulane University in his home state. He is leaning towards Harvard's offer, but will consider the financial aid packages. The deadline to decide is May 1st. The current price for 1 year at Harvard Law is $116,000, including tuition, fees, books, and other expenses. The school offers aid based on financial circumstances and recently boosted assistance for the highest need students, including some free tuition this year, costing $77,000. During his junior year at Dillard, Moore attended a presentation about Harvard Law by an associate director of admissions at Harvard and Wynn. The two men, who both attended HBCUs, stayed in touch, and Moore got a taste of the BLSA's close-knit community. Interacting with the group was also enough to reassure him that Harvard is likely the right choice, despite this year's decline in black students enrolling. Quote, "That alone gives me a sense of comfort that the gap will close," said Moore, who was raised by his mother, a nurse in Louisiana. She was with him, along with his grandmother, when he received a call from Harvard in January about his offer. Wynn's own pathway shows how influential a spot at Harvard Law can be in accessing the top tier of U.S. law jobs. After graduation in May, he'll join New York firm Paul, Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison, also home for former U.S. Attorney General and Harvard Law alumnus Loretta Lynch. In September, black alumni of the law school are organizing a celebration on campus, a regular assembly over the past 25 years. One of the attendees will be Ben Wilson, who grew up in the segregated South in Jackson, Mississippi. He graduated from Harvard Law in 1976, where his classmates included Chenault, Paul Weiss partner Ted Wells, and Franklin Raines, who ran Fannie Mae and was the White House budget director under President Bill Clinton. About 45 black students were enrolled at the time, according to a school report. Quote, "It's really important to understand these institutions have not been diverse for that long," said Wilson. He led environmental law firm Beveridge and Diamond, and his wife, fellow Harvard Law student Marinda Wilson, whom he met on their first day, was the first black woman partner at law firm Sidney Alston. Quote, "If you have less diversity within your class, all students will miss an opportunity to learn from each other," he said. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.